So please welcome my sister and friend, Alessandra Orofino, to the stage.
Thank you. Hi, it's so good to be here. Hi. I love this community. I'm so happy to be here with you this morning. Thank you for showing up. And I'm going to start us off with a little provocation because, try to keep things interesting. I know that this room has spent decades now building the infrastructure of social change, legal strategy, advocacy, organizing, policy reform, and we have won real victories. But I think that if we look honestly at the last 10 years, sometimes in many democracies around the world, and that is certainly true of my native Brazil, it just feels like we're losing ground sometimes faster than we're gaining it. And it can be really frustrating. And many conversations I've had this week have reinforced that belief in me. I think that the answer to why that's happening may be that we're not always fighting in the right terrains, or at least we're leaving a few strategies out, a few tools out of our toolkit. Culture really is upstream from policy. Before a law changes, a story has to change. Before a vote is cast, a feeling has to shift. The stories that people absorb as entertainment, the chatter they take to be the spontaneous opinion of their neighbors, the celebrities they trust and don't trust, these are the actual inputs to political belief. And in climate in particular, we have largely ceded that terrain to the other side. There are two distinct ways in which culture and cultural narratives can be engineered. The first is what I call driving cultural events. This means sponsoring the stories that people watch, embedding values inside entertainment that reaches tens of millions of people every night, shaping who becomes a celebrity and what that celebrity actually represents, what that signifies. This is the slow, expensive, and powerful work of making certain ideas just feel like common sense. The second way is manufacturing the chatter, making a political viewpoint just feel like the spontaneous opinion of millions by floating social media with high engagement, high frequency, coordinated content. What looks organic is often infrastructure. What feels like a national mood or even an international mood is a machine. These two levers work in tandem. And in Brazil, one sector in particular has spent the last 2 decades mastering both. And unfortunately for us, it's not a sector known for its climate-friendly policies. In 2022, a national survey asked Brazilians what share of GDP they believed agribusiness, big agro, accounted for. 63% of Brazilians said that they believed that big agro was the main driver of the Brazilian economy. But according to the Brazilian government, big agro only accounts for roughly 7% of Brazilian GDP. The sector insists it should be 30%. It's a whole controversy. But that's the national figure that we have. This gap between reality and perception is not just a misunderstanding. It is the measurable output of a sustained cultural strategy. And it is, frankly, one of the most impressive feats of narrative engineering that I've ever seen. It has pushed a message of Brazilian identity, of national identity, directly linked to dominion over nature. This idea that we as a people need to learn and are defined by our ability to dominate nature. To do so, it has used religious messaging sometimes. It has leveraged this kind of frontier mentality that was largely copied from the United States. But most of all, it has built the cultural infrastructure to make this set of values, these mental models, travel fast and at scale. On television, JBS, the world's largest meat processor, it's a Brazilian company, they have sponsored Brazil's main soap opera slot on Globo, that's the local media giant, the media empire in Brazil, for 7 consecutive years. The new novella on air right now is called Accelerated Heart, and it's themed around agribusiness very explicitly, and it secured 48 brand integrations before a single episode even aired. It is now reaching an audience of millions of people every night. A last episode in a popular soap opera in Brazil can reach as much as half the population. That is the reach that they have. And the messages that they're embedding into these soap operas look very much like this one.
Que ficam achando que quando comete o erro, todo mundo é assim. Não é não, a gente que é produtor rural, a gente quer o quê? Futuro melhor para todo mundo. A gente quer ver evolução no negócio. Quer prosperar.
Nós não estamos aqui plantando só para plantar.
Não, uma missão. É isso que é, uma missão. Só que o agro tá aqui, ó, no meu coração.
I'm not going to argue with him, you know? I don't know about you, but the agro is now here in my heart too. No, I'm kidding. But this is really highly effective. And it has also been applied in the context of other cultural products, like reality shows, for instance. Brazilians are obsessed with Big Brother Brazil. I'm not going to get into it because you would kill me. But every year, there are contestants linked to the agro world who are deployed as cultural ambassadors, also reaching tens of millions in prime time. On the radio, Big Agro has manufactured a new music genre. It's called agronejo. I am very sorry to tell you about this. And their sole purpose is to make agribusiness, but also this very aggressive form of agribusiness, feel like Brazilian national identity. And that music genre is now one of the most popular ones in the country. This is what it sounds like.
Respeita, porra. Hoje o meu cordão de ouro vale uma boiada. Tem avião pra jogar veneno nas pragas. E 10 colheitadeiras, já tudo quitada. Segunda, sexta é safra, final de semana é farra. E hoje o meu cordão de ouro vale uma boiada. Tem avião pra jogar veneno nas pragas.
Yeah. Who would have thought that dropping pesticides through an airplane, which is actually illegal in Brazil, would make it to a really popular, song? Those are not marketing decisions. This is a decades-long project to own the national imagination. My team and I decided to measure this impact while also getting a better understanding of how cultural engineering works in practice. So we spent a year monitoring Globo's programming. We analyzed over 9,000 hours across 8,000 broadcasts. We scraped the subtitles and analyzed the actual content of these broadcasts. And what we found was really striking. In a single year, Globo dedicated 14 full hours to direct discourse defending the most aggressive forms of agribusiness. Compare that with less than 5 hours of any kind of positive Amazon representation. It's not a fair fight. That is an average of 2.5 minutes per day, every day, making the case for Big Agro. I mean, Pat is right here. You know what that means on national TV, right? That is the most watched television network in Brazil. We also spent 2 months mapping Brazil's social media landscape. We analyzed 177 assets, different channels and pages on Instagram and YouTube in particular. And we analyzed things like engagement, editorial line, and political affiliation. Here's what we found on social media. The Agro Caucus in Congress actively worked to protect the sports betting industry from taxation. Stay with me, I'm gonna get there. Now, after that, betting companies with massive, unregulated marketing budgets became the primary financial sponsors of high-reach, very politicized, but subtly politicized, social media assets. This is Brazil's highest engagement gossip page on Instagram. It's a tabloid page, right? It's called Alfinete. You can see the betting company logo on some of the content. And it's sponsored by a sports betting company that is actually indirectly owned by a former Bolsonaro minister. That page shows engagement levels that dwarf comparable pages by multiples, not margins. Their editorial is a mix of which celebrity got divorced, whose plastic surgery went wrong, whose baby is cutest, and anti-climate, pro-agro messaging around real-world events. Each post gets an average of 500,000 likes and thousands of comments and reshares, amounting to over 2.2 billion comments and reshares over the course of a year. The chatter is coordinated, the spontaneity is purchased. And guess what? During our qualitative monitoring period, which lasted for about 2 weeks, a full 13% of Alfinete's posts were solely dedicated to Ana Castela, Agronejo's biggest pop star. That's how you create a celebrity. So what does 2 decades of coordinated cultural engineering actually produce? Well, that manufactured perception translated into electoral power. Big Agro's caucus now has 350 members. It's a majority in both chambers of Congress. That is the largest thematic caucus in Brazilian congressional history. And that parliamentary majority translated into concrete policy wins that would have been unthinkable 20 years ago. Indigenous land rights were restricted through legislation that directly defied a Supreme Court ruling. Environmental licensing was weakened, with Congress actually overriding presidential vetoes. Pesticide regulations were rolled back. And the sports betting industry, again, was protected from increased taxation, closing the loop, right? Keeping the media machine funded and running. The perception built the power. The power made the policy. Culture was upstream the entire time. So what does this mean for our field? I think we need to be honest. The social impact sector and the climate sector have been really effective at building legal strategies, advocacy campaigns, and organizing infrastructure. Other sectors did all that too, because that's really important stuff. But they also built cultural footprints and large-scale chatter machines. One of these approaches changed what 63% of Brazilians think about their own economy, their own identity, their own prosperity. We cannot out-organize a cultural hegemony we're not contesting. And we do that by appealing to persuadable audiences in the media outlets that they already consume. I didn't start with this theory. I started by trying to organize my own audience. People who are already on our side, already motivated, already wanting to take action, but who needed content that reflected their values, that sharpened their convictions, that gave them good arguments when debating other people. 10 years ago, after spending most of my 20s solely dedicated to the nonprofit sector, I actually started a comedy show. Don't worry, I wasn't actually hosting it, I was just running it. And I ran that show on HBO, Latin America, for 7 consecutive seasons. After winning the Skoll Award of my nonprofit, thank you, Skoll, I actually, a couple of years later, I actually left, and I founded a media company. The organization is doing just fine without me. Turns out I was really not needed. Anyway, but then I worked on film and TV. I've been shortlisted for the Oscars. I was nominated for a BAFTA. My projects were picked up by media giants like Netflix. And I created and host one of the top 3 news and political analysis podcasts in Brazil. So that was really fun. Thank you. No, I'm super proud. It was very fun to do. But organizing the base, however well you do it, is not enough to win. The people who can vote in pro-climate politicians into Brazil's Congress this October are not already on the side of climate action. They are the persuadable middle, the vast majority of Brazilians who don't identify with any political movement, who would tune out an advocacy message, but whose attention and trust can and should be earned through content they already love and watch. This is what my latest project is trying to do. I'm building a media fund in Brazil that acquires and invests into existing assets with extraordinary reach among the size of audiences. My first portfolio of assets is looking at women aged 18 to 50, over 40% of whom are single mothers, and who are overrepresented amongst Brazil's undecided voters. These are the people who will decide whether the far right comes back into office in October. And right now, nobody is really building media infrastructure for them. My pipeline now includes Instagram gossip pages, lifestyle pages, YouTube comedy channels, and other channels with gigantic audiences who care about wellness, relationships, and family. I'm not going to win any prizes. There will be no accolades, because this is all very lowbrow content. But it's really highly effective. And my ultimate goal here is to reach at least 80% of the Brazilian population with multiple impressions per week to make democracy and environmental responsibility the cultural common sense of Brazil. And I believe, thank you. We can do it. I believe that if we can do it in Brazil, this could also become a model for other places around the world, right? And it takes that kind of different financial instruments, different minds, people coming from the nonprofit sector, people coming from the media sector, people coming from the private investment sector. There is a lot there, but it's really needed. I'm doing this because I really believe that if culture can be engineered toward harm, and it can and it has been, then it can be engineered towards justice. Brazilians really need to see environmental stewardship as central to who we are as a country. We are not just an economic force. We're not just a commodities producer. We are home to some of the richest, most precious biodiversity on Earth. But too often, we are told that our only function, our only worth, is to exploit our natural resources in the dumbest way possible, sacrificing long-term values shared by the many for short-term growth that benefits the very, very few. The chatter is not organic. The stories are not neutral. The question for this room is whether we are willing to build the infrastructure to compete in that terrain. Thank you. Muito obrigada.